For most of my adult life, I was the number people called when the real options ran out. Not in an emergency, in the comfortable, low-stakes way where people know you'll say yes before they've finished the sentence. The kind of yes that gets built into budgets. The kind that shows up in family plans without anyone asking. My name is Imogen. I'm 31 years old. I work as a physician assistant in an orthopedic clinic in Charlotte, North Carolina. I wake up at 5:15 on shift days, drive 40 minutes, spend 10 hours watching people manage pain they didn't expect, and drive home. I do this 4 days a week. I make a good salary. I rent a one-bedroom apartment that my family describes without irony as cozy for one person. For 11 months before my dad's 60th birthday dinner, I sent exactly $2,000 a month to people in my family. $1,200 toward the shortfall on my parents' mortgage they'd refinanced in 2021 to pull out equity for home renovations and my brother's business start squat costs, and my dad's Social Security plus my mom's part-time church bookkeeping job didn't cover what was left. $800 to my brother, Silas, who called it a business operating loan and used it primarily for inventory that sat in a storage unit outside Raleigh and a new desk setup for what he called his home office and I called his parents' basement. Silas is 36. He lives in my parents' finished basement with his girlfriend Hazel. He has run a dropshipping business for 3 years. It has never once been profitable. Hazel sells handmade soy candles on Etsy, and in her best month, she cleared $87 before fees. I know this because she told me herself proudly, like it was a milestone. I smiled and said, "That's great." I paid my parents' shortfall because my dad had a health scare and missed 2 weeks of work, except he was already retired, so really he just had a bad month and panicked, and called me, and I said yes, I paid Silas because he called it temporary and I wanted to believe him. The mortgage help was supposed to be just until things stabilized. The business loan was supposed to be repaid in 60 days. Neither of those things happened. Things didn't stabilize. The 60 days became 11 months. I stopped reminding them. The dinner was Silas's idea. He picked the restaurant, a mid-range Italian place in downtown Raleigh that had cloth napkins and a wine list and a prix-fixe option. He texted the family group chat with the link and said, "Dad deserves something nice." Everyone reacted with heart emojis. Nobody's mentioned payment. Nobody had to. The math was understood. Silas picks the venue, I cover the check. I drove up from Charlotte on a Saturday afternoon. My boyfriend Felix had offered to come. I told him it was a family thing. He said, "I know, that's why I offered." I told him I'd be fine. He texted me 2 hours later, a single line, "You don't have to absorb whatever they hand you tonight." I read it in a gas station parking lot in Greensboro and sat with it for a minute. The restaurant was warm and dim, the kind of lighting that flatters everyone equally. My parents were already seated when I arrived. My dad looked good, rested, wearing the blue button-down my mom always put him in for occasions. She'd done something with her hair. There was a moment, walking toward the table, where I felt the thing families are supposed to feel. Then Silas walked in behind me with Hazel, and she was wearing a dress that probably cost more than my last grocery run, and he clapped a hand on my shoulder and said, "There she is. The woman of the hour." Oh wait, that's Dad, but she's definitely paying like she is. And he laughed, and Hazel smiled, and my dad chuckled, and I sat down. We ordered. I had the salmon. I drank 1 glass of wine slowly because I was driving back that night. The conversation moved the way family conversations do at restaurants. Surface level, careful, everyone performing a version of themselves. Silas talked about his business. He used words like scaling and Q4 projections. My parents nodded like they were hearing something real. Hazel told a long story about a customer who bought 12 candles for a wedding. My mom asked the questions you ask when you want someone to feel heard. And then what happened? Wow, really? I watched it. I didn't perform. I smiled when it was appropriate. I answered when someone spoke to me directly. Between bites, I did the quiet math of a person who has learned not to exist too loudly in rooms like this. Then dessert came and Silas stood up. He held his wine glass the way men do when they think they're about to give a speech worth remembering. He talked about our dad, his work ethic, his sacrifices, 60 years of showing up. Some of it was actually true. Some of it was the sentimental performance of a man who lets other people do the heavy lifting while he narrates. My parents were glowing. My dad's eyes got a little wet. Then Silas turned to me. "And a special mention," he said, grinning, "to my little sister, always available, always reliable." He tilted his glass toward me. I mean, what would we do without her? No husband, no kids, no big life pulling her in 17 directions. She just has time and money. And this amazing ability to just show up for us every single time. He laughed, the laugh of someone who believes what he's saying is a compliment. My dad laughed too, soft, warm, real. My mom pressed her hand to her chest and gave me that look that's supposed to mean, "Aren't you lucky to be so needed?" Hazel took a sip of her wine and looked away. I sat very still. There's a sound that's not a sound, the internal click of something that has been waiting a long time to stop waiting. That's what I heard. Not anger, not hurt exactly, something more like clarity, the kind that comes when you finally stop negotiating with yourself. I set my fork down on the edge of my plate. I picked up my own glass, which had maybe 3 sips left in it. I stood up. I actually want to add something, I said. The table went quiet in that polite way. I looked at Silas, not the rest of them, just him. Since we're toasting, I want everyone to know that the Zelle transfer you're expecting Monday morning isn't coming. The mortgage payment I've been covering since January isn't coming next month either. I paused, not for effect, just because I needed to breathe. I wanted you to hear it from me in person so there's no confusion. I lifted my glass toward my dad, happy birthday, and I sat back down. I didn't leave. That was the part that no one was prepared for. I picked up my fork. I finished my salmon. I drank the last of my wine. The conversation didn't restart. The dessert plate sat untouched. My dad stared at the tablecloth. My mom looked at Silas. Silas looked at me, the grin gone now, something tight and recalibrating moving behind his eyes. When the check came, I paid for my salmon and my 1 glass of wine, left a fair tip on my portion, and said goodnight. I drove back to Charlotte with the radio off. Felix was still awake when I got home. He didn't ask what happened. He handed me a cup of tea and sat next to me on the couch. After a while I said, I told them the money was stopping. He said, good. I said they didn't know it was happening until I said it tonight. He said that part I assumed. We sat for a while longer in the quiet of my apartment, which suddenly felt like the only room in the world where I wasn't managing anything. The first text came Monday at 9:14 a.m., my brother, no greeting. Hey, Zelle didn't come through, must have glitched. Can you resend? I put my phone down, finished getting ready for work, drove in, saw 4 patients before lunch, ate my leftover soup at my desk, picked up my phone. No glitch, I wrote back. I meant what I said Saturday. 3 minutes passed. Are you serious right now? Not a question. A statement of disbelief, the kind that wants to be performed rather than received. I put my phone away and went back to work. My mom called that afternoon. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was 7 minutes long. I listened to it on the drive home, the volume low. She said the word family 14 times. She said I was being dramatic. She said my dad didn't mean any harm by laughing. He just didn't want to make things awkward. She said my brother was counting on me. She said you have to understand, this is a difficult time for everyone. I called her back the next morning. I understand it's difficult, I said. Stopping was difficult for me too. I've been doing this for almost a year. Imogen, her voice went into that register. You're our daughter. I know, I said. That's why I came to dinner. That's why I told you in person. You humiliated your brother. I thought about that for a second. About the cloth napkins, about the wine list, about Silas saying she just has time and money, and the table laughing, and the moment my fork hit the plate. He said that in front of everyone, I said, about me. I just clarified the arrangement. She didn't have an answer for that. She tried a few angles, and I let her, and after a while the conversation reached its natural end and we said goodbye. My dad called Thursday. I picked up. He was quieter than my mom, more careful with his words, the way men his age sometimes are when they know they're on uncertain ground. He asked how I was. I said fine. He asked about work. I said busy. Then he said we're going to have some trouble with the mortgage if things don't get sorted out. I know, I said. I'm sorry you're in that position. A pause. You're not going to help. Not with money, I said no. Another pause, longer. You know I never asked you to start doing this. Dad, I said it gently, I know, but I kept doing it, and everyone kept expecting it, and Saturday night your son stood up at your birthday dinner and used my life, my choices, the fact that I'm not married, to make a joke about how useful I am, and everyone laughed. I let a breath out slowly. I'm not angry at you, but I'm not going to keep funding a situation where that's how I'm talked about. He didn't say much after that, but he didn't hang up either. We stayed on the line for another few minutes talking about nothing, his physical therapy, a bird that had been visiting their back porch. When we said goodbye, he said, I love you, kid. I said it back. Both of us meaning it, which is what made the whole thing so complicated. My cousin Boyd texted me the following week. Boyd is 34, works as a paralegal, has the instincts of a court reporter, he misses nothing and holds on to everything. His text said, FYI, the family group chat has been active. You're the topic, just so you're not blindsided. I thanked him. He sent a follow-up. For what it's worth, I've known for a while that you were covering more than you let on. I didn't say anything because it wasn't my business. But what Silas said at dinner was ugly. I stared at that for a while. Boyd had never said anything like that to me before. It felt like being seen by someone who wasn't looking for anything in return. Thanks, I wrote back. That actually means something. 3 weeks went by. Silas stopped texting when it became clear the money wasn't returning. My mom went quiet in the way that means she's rerouting. My dad sent me a picture of the bird on the porch. A cedar waxwing. I looked it up. I sent back a photo of my dinner that night. Small things, but there. I spent those 3 weeks doing something else too. I made calls, asked questions of people who worked in places I'd never thought to contact before. I found a HUD-approved housing counselor through a nonprofit in Raleigh. Free service. They work with homeowners facing payment difficulties, help them understand refinancing options, mortgage modification programs, what to do if they're behind. I called and asked about their process. The woman I spoke to was patient and thorough and told me exactly what my parents would need to bring. I found the Small Business Development Center affiliated with the local community college near my parents' house. Also free, it's a federal program, SBA funded, meant specifically for small business owners who need help with operations, financials, strategy. They have advisors who meet with you one-on-one. I looked up the types of businesses they work with. E-commerce was on the list. I found 3 full-time bookkeeping and accounting coordinator positions within 15 miles of my parents' neighborhood that would use exactly the skills my mom already had from her church work. I noted the salary ranges. They were good. I printed everything, labeled the folders. Then I texted my mom, my dad, and Silas separately. Can you come to my place Saturday? I want to talk. I'll have food. They came. Silas brought Hazel, which I'd anticipated. Boyd came too because I'd asked him to. He's the only person in my family who can sit in a room and just witness things without needing to perform. My apartment is not large. 5 people made it feel significant. I had a pot of chili on the stove, cornbread in the oven, because I wanted the room to smell like something warm and real, not like a confrontation. We ate. We made small talk. My mom complimented my curtains. Hazel asked where I got my coffee table. Silas ate 2 bowls of chili and didn't look directly at me. When we finished, I cleared the plates and brought out the folders. I set one in front of my dad, one in front of Silas, one in front of my mom. I want to be clear, I said, sitting back down. I'm not here to argue. I'm here because I love you, and I don't want to just disappear, but I'm also not going back to the way things were. So I spent some time finding things that might actually help. My mom opened her folder first. She looked at the job listings. Her expression shifted, not angry, something more uncertain. I said, your bookkeeping experience is real. The church has been underusing you for 6 years at part-time. These positions are full-time, they're close by, and one of them specifically wants someone who's worked with nonprofits. She looked up at me. Something moved behind her eyes that I didn't have a name for. My dad was looking at his folder, the HUD counselor information. I explained what they do, that it was free, that they'd helped homeowners in situations far more complicated than his. That it didn't mean losing the house, it meant actually understanding what the options were instead of just hoping the problem resolved itself. He nodded slowly, he didn't argue. Silas had not touched his folder. I said the SBDC has been around since the 80s. It's federal, it's free. They have advisors who work specifically with e-commerce and product-based businesses. I paused. If what you're building is real, they can help you figure out what's not working. If it's not, they can help you figure out what to do instead. Either way, you need someone who knows more than I do about business. I don't know anything about business. I've just been funding one. The room was very quiet. Hazel was looking at her hands. Silas looked at the folder, then at me. So that's it. This is your answer. That's what I have, I said. You're not going to help. I am helping. This is me helping. He laughed once, short and sharp. This isn't help, this is homework. I'm giving you resources, I said. Real ones. The help I was giving before wasn't helping. You've been in the basement for 3 years, Silas. I've been sending $800 a month for 11 months. Nothing changed. That's not on you alone, but it's also not something I can keep doing and call it love. Nobody talked for a moment. The chili pot clicked on the stove. Then my mom said quietly, we were counting on you. I know, I said. You've been counting on me since I started saying yes, but you counted without asking and without checking whether I could afford it, and without treating me like someone whose time and salary had limits. I looked at my mom. Silas said at dinner that I had no real life pulling me in 17 directions, that I just had time and money. I held her gaze. You laughed. She looked away. I don't need an apology tonight, I said. I need you to use what's in those folders. They left around 7. No blow-up, no slam door. Silas took his folder. He didn't say goodbye to me directly. Hazel touched my arm on her way out briefly and said, "Thank you for the food." Her voice was different than usual, smaller, more like a person and less like a costume. Boyd stayed to help with dishes. He said, "That went better than I expected." I said I was surprised too. He said, "You should have done this 8 months ago." I said, "I know." He said, "You're not a bad person for not knowing." I handed him a dish towel. After he left, I sat on my couch in the quiet. Felix called from 2 time zones over. He was on a work trip, structural engineering's inspections out west. I told him how it went. He said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, actually." "I think I am." He said, "I'll be home Thursday." I said, "Good." We talked for another 20 minutes about nothing that mattered and everything that did. The first real shift came 11 days later. Boyd sent me a photo. No caption, just the image. Silas sitting in a small office across from a man in a button-down, both of them looking at a laptop screen. The SBDC logo was visible on a banner behind them. I zoomed in just to be sure. I didn't text Silas. I didn't need to. 4 days after that, my mom called. She'd gotten an interview at the nonprofit, the one that had specifically wanted someone with her background. She called to tell me. Her voice was different than it had been in weeks. Tighter, in a new way, like a person standing up instead of sitting down. "I haven't interviewed in 12 years, she said. "You'll be fine," I said. "I'm nervous." "That's normal." There was a pause then. I looked up the housing counselor too. "We have an appointment next week, your dad and I." I didn't say anything for a second. "Imogen," she said, I don't know how to say this right." "You don't have to say it right," I said. "Just say it." She took a breath. "We leaned on you too hard. I don't know when it started, but we did. And what your brother said at dinner." Another pause. I shouldn't have laughed. The words sat between us in the phone line. Not enough, maybe, for everything that had been spent, but something. The first honest thing in a long time. "I know," I said. "Thank you." She got the job. She started the following Monday. A week after that, I got a text from Hazel. We'd never texted before. She'd always been in the background of my brother's life, a vague presence at family gatherings. The text said, "He came home from the SBDC thing and actually sat down and looked at our numbers for real, like printed out a spreadsheet. I've never seen him do that before. I don't know what's going to happen with everything, but I just wanted you to know." I read it twice. I wrote back, "That's a good sign. I hope he keeps going." She sent a thumbs up. That was it. That was enough. My dad texted me 3 weeks later, out of nowhere. Not about money, not about the house. Just a picture of the bird again, the cedar waxwing, back on the porch railing. He'd looked up what they eat and put out fruit. The caption said, "He brought 2 friends today." I smiled at my phone in the break room at work. I didn't go back to paying their bills. I didn't make any promises. I didn't wait for a formal apology that covered every item on a list of grievances. That's not how families work, and I've stopped expecting them to. What changed was simpler than that. They stopped needing me to be their floor, and when they stopped leaning, they had to stand. And when they stood, something in the room rearranged itself, slowly, imperfectly, in ways nobody announced. My brother is still working on his business. The SBDC advisor told him his cost structure was broken and his niche was too saturated, and he's been pivoting. He may fail at the new thing too, I genuinely don't know. What I know is that he's showing up to those meetings, and Hazel seems less like someone waiting for a disaster and more like someone cautiously planning for otherwise. My parents met with the housing counselor. Their mortgage situation is complicated, but there are options, a modification program they qualified for that they hadn't known existed. My mom's new salary closes most of the gap the modification doesn't. I don't know what our future looks like as a family. I'm not naive enough to think one dinner conversation fixed 11 months of blurred boundaries and 3 years of quiet enabling. Families don't just recalibrate and continue smoothly. They snag. They backtrack. They have dinners where everyone is fine and then phone calls where it's complicated again. But I know what it feels like now to finish a month and find my own savings account looking like it belongs to me. I know what it feels like to buy a plane ticket to see Felix without checking first whether someone needs something. I know what it feels like to sit in my car after a shift and not feel the particular weight of money that's already spoken for before I've earned it. I am not their safety net, not their floor, not their backup plan, not their reliable little sister who has time and money and no real life to get in the way. I'm just Imogen, 31. A physician assistant with a 1-bedroom apartment in Charlotte and a cedar waxwing saved in her camera roll, and a boyfriend who asks how I'm actually doing and means it. That's enough. For the first time in a long time, that is exactly enough.